The giant space station floated quietly in the black void between three burning stars. Each star was a different color, red, blue, and yellow, and their light mixed together to make strange rainbow patterns on the metal walls of the Academy. The station was bigger than most cities back on Earth, with thousands of rooms and halls stretching in every direction. Park Dae-ho pressed his face against the small window of the transport ship and stared at his new home. The Galactic Military Academy looked like a massive metal flower with dozens of sections branching out from a central core. Each section was designed for different types of aliens with different needs. Some needed high gravity, others needed poisonous gas to breathe, and some could only survive in freezing cold temperatures. The transport ship was full of new students from all over the galaxy. Park Dae-ho could see creatures he had never imagined in his wildest dreams. There were tall, reptile-like beings with scales that changed color when they moved. There were floating jellyfish creatures that glowed with their own light. There were rock people made of living crystal that made musical sounds when they walked. Next to him sat his friend Kim Tae-min, who was trying not to throw up. The artificial gravity on the ship kept changing as they got closer to the Academy, and it was making everyone sick except for the aliens who seemed used to space travel. Kim Tae-min was from Busan and had never been off Earth before yesterday. Behind them sat Lee So-young, the only girl in their group of human students. She was small and quiet, but Park Dae-ho had seen her fight during training back on Earth. She was faster and stronger than most of the boys and never gave up no matter how hard things got. Her parents had not wanted her to join the military, but she had convinced them that humans needed representatives in space. Cho Min-ho and Yoon Jae-sung were sitting together near the back of the ship. Both of them were engineering students who had scored perfectly on every test they had ever taken. They spoke in whispers about the technical specifications of the Academy and how the artificial gravity systems worked. Park Dae-ho did not understand most of what they said, but he knew they were both brilliant. The 5 humans were the only ones from their species on the transport ship. All the other passengers were aliens who had grown up knowing about space travel and different worlds. For them, going to the Academy was normal. But for the humans, it was like stepping into a fairy tale that had come to life as they got closer to the Academy Park. Dae-ho could see other transport ships arriving from different directions. Each ship was designed for a different type of alien. Some ships were shaped like long tubes, others looked like geometric crystals, and a few seemed to be made of living tissue that pulsed like a heartbeat. The docking process took almost an hour because the Academy had to adjust the atmosphere and gravity for each group of new students. When the humans finally stepped off their transport ship, they found themselves in a huge welcome hall that was bigger than any building they had ever seen. The ceiling was so high that clouds had formed near. The top and small flying creatures that looked like tiny dragons were flying around in circles. The walls were covered with symbols and writing in hundreds of different alien languages. Park Dae-ho recognized a few words in English, but most of the writing looked like abstract art. Thousands of alien students filled the welcome hall, and the noise was incredible. Every species seemed to communicate differently. Some made clicking sounds, others hummed in musical tones, and a few seemed to communicate by changing the color of their skin. The humans stuck close together, feeling very small and out of place. A floating robot approached them and spoke in perfect Korean, which surprised all of them. The robot explained that the Academy had downloaded every Earth language and could communicate with any species. The robot scanned each of their identification cards and gave them maps of the Academy, along with their room assignments. Park Dae-ho looked at his map and felt overwhelmed. The Academy was divided into hundreds of different sections, each one adapted for different alien biology. There were underwater sections for aquatic species, high-pressure areas for creatures from heavy gravity worlds, and even sections that existed in multiple dimensions at the same time. The robot led them through a series of corridors that seemed to go on forever. Each corridor was different with walls that matched the needs of whoever lived in that section. Some corridors had thick jungle, plants growing on the walls. Others had flowing water or floating crystals that provided light. Other students moved through the corridors in groups, usually staying with their own species. Park Dae-ho noticed that most aliens seemed to know each other or at least recognize other species from their home regions. The humans were clearly outsiders who did not fit into any established group. They passed a group of tall, insect-like creatures who were communicating by rubbing their wings together to make different sounds. A few of them stopped to stare at the humans clicking their mandibles in what might have been laughter or curiosity. Park Dae-ho could not tell which, and that made him nervous. In another corridor, they encountered a group of furry, bear-like aliens who were almost 8 feet tall. These creatures moved with surprising grace despite their size, and their small eyes tracked the humans as they passed. One of them said something in a growling language that made the others grunt in response. Lee, so young, walked with her head held high. Despite the constant stares, she had dealt with discrimination before as one of the few female soldiers in the Korean military, and she was not going to let alien prejudice break her confidence. She smiled politely at every creature they passed, even when they obviously found her presence amusing. The robot finally stopped in front of a section marked with Earth symbols and explained that this area had been specially designed for human biology. The gravity was set to Earth. Normal, the air was the right mixture for human lungs, and the temperature was comfortable for their species. Their rooms were small but functional, with everything they needed for the next 4 years of training. Each human had a private room with a bed desk and computer terminal that could connect to the Galactic Information Network. Park Dae-ho put his few belongings in the closet and sat on his bed trying to process everything he had seen. Through his room window, he could see one of the training areas where alien students were practicing combat techniques. A group of reptilian creatures were moving so fast they looked like blurs, while crystal beings were shooting beams of energy at floating targets. The level of ability he was seeing made him wonder if humans really belonged in this place. Kim Tae-min knocked on his door and came in looking pale and nervous. He had been reading about their first day of training tomorrow and the instructor, who would be teaching them. Instructor Vorthak was a Craxian warrior with over 30 years of military experience and a reputation for being extremely tough on new students. That night, the 5 humans met in the common area of their section to talk about what they had gotten themselves into. None of them had expected the academy to be so overwhelming or the other species to be so physically impressive compared to humans. They all wondered if they had made a terrible mistake, but as they sat together talking about home and their families, Park Dae-ho felt his determination growing stronger. He had not come this far to give up before even starting training. His grandmother had always told him that strength came from inside, not from how big or scary you look tomorrow. They would prove that humans deserve to be here. The alarm sound that woke the human cadets was unlike anything they had ever heard. It was a deep, rumbling noise that seemed to come from inside their bones and made their teeth vibrate. Park Dae-ho rolled out of bed and checked the time display. On his wall, it was 5 in the morning. Academy time, which meant their first day of real training was about to begin. Kim Tae-min was already awake in the next room, making worried sounds as he got dressed. Lee So-young knocked on both their doors and reminded them that breakfast was in 30 minutes, and they could not be late on their first day. Cho Min-ho and Yoon Jae-sung were talking quietly in the hallway about what they had read regarding Craxian military training methods. The dining hall was enormous, with sections designed for different alien digestive systems. The human section had food that looked somewhat familiar, but everything tasted different because it had to be grown in artificial environments. Some of the other species ate things that glowed or moved on their plates, while others seemed to absorb nutrients directly through their skin. Park Dae-ho noticed that most alien students were much larger than humans, even the ones that were considered small by their species. Standards. A group of wolf-like creatures at a nearby table were easily twice as tall as any human, and their casual movements suggested incredible strength. Several crystal beings were floating above their section while eating pure energy that looked like captured lightning. The 5 humans ate quickly and quietly while trying not to stare at the amazing variety of life forms around them. They had studied alien species during their preparation training, but seeing them in person was completely different. Every creature seemed perfectly adapted for combat in ways that made human abilities look pathetic by comparison. After breakfast, they followed their maps to Training Hall 7, which was located deep inside the academy structure. The corridors leading to the training area were wider and had reinforced walls that showed signs of damage from previous training sessions. Scorch marks and deep scratches covered the metal surfaces like battle scars. Other cadet groups were moving in the same direction, and Park Dae-ho could see the confidence in how they walked. Most of these aliens had grown up in military families or came from warrior cultures where strength was the most important virtue. The humans looked like children, walking among giants. Training Hall 7 was massive enough to hold several football fields with a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. The floor was made of some kind of metal that could apparently repair itself because Park Dae-ho could see small scratches and dents healing as they watched weapons racks line the walls, holding tools designed for dozens of different types of alien anatomy. About 200 cadet students filled the space, representing at least 30 different species. The largest group was the Vaxons, who looked like armored bears with retractable claws that could cut through steel. The Zephyrhites floated in formation while their crystal bodies rang like bells when they moved. The Quillen darted back and forth so quickly they left brief after-images in the air. When Instructor Vorthak entered the training hall, every conversation stopped immediately. The Craxian was enormous, even by alien standards, standing over 8 feet tall with 4 powerful arms and obsidian black scales that seemed to absorb light. His head was elongated like a crocodile with rows of sharp teeth and 4 eyes that could track different targets simultaneously. His voice boomed across the hall as he began speaking in Galactic Standard, the common language used throughout the academy. His accent was thick and harsh, making every word sound like a threat or challenge. The translator devices that all cadets wore converted his speech into their native languages. But somehow the menacing tone came through perfectly. Instructor Vorthak began his speech by talking about the glorious history of the Craxian military and how they had conquered entire star systems through superior strength and tactical brilliance. He described battles where Craxian warriors had fought against impossible odds and won through sheer determination and physical power. Then he began talking about the different species represented in the training hall and their various strengths. The Vaxons were praised for their natural armor and healing abilities. The Zephyrhites were acknowledged for their energy manipulation powers. The Quillen received recognition for their incredible speed and agility as he moved through the different species. Park Dae-ho noticed that Instructor Vorthak seemed to genuinely respect most of the alien students. He talked about their home worlds and the challenges that had shaped their evolution into powerful warriors. Each species had something that made them formidable in combat. But when his 4 eyes finally focused on the small group of humans, his entire demeanor changed. His mandibles spread in what might have been a smile, but looked more like a predator showing its teeth. He walked toward them slowly, while the entire hall watched in anticipation. Instructor Vorthak stopped directly in front of Park Dae-ho and leaned down so that his massive head was only inches away from the human cadet. His breath was hot and smelled like sulfur and metal. His 4 eyes examined Park Dae-ho from different angles, as if he were studying some kind of curious insect. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with amusement and contempt. He asked why such weak creatures had been allowed into an institution designed to train real warriors. He wondered aloud if there had been some kind of administrative mistake that needed to be corrected immediately. The instructor began listing everything wrong with human physiology compared to proper warrior species. He talked about their thin skin that could be punctured by simple weapons, their brittle bones that would break under minimal pressure, and their pathetic single set of arms that limited their combat effectiveness. Kim Tai-min shifted nervously as Instructor Vorthak continued his analysis of human weakness. The alien pointed out their poor eyesight compared to species with multiple spectrums of vision, their slow reflexes compared to creatures evolved for constant combat, and their laughable lifespan that barely allowed time to learn basic military skills. Lee So-young kept her expression neutral even as the instructor made specific comments about human females being particularly unsuited for combat roles. He suggested that their smaller size and lesser muscle mass made them potential liabilities, who would endanger real soldiers in actual battle situations. Cho Min-ho and Yoon Jae-sung stood perfectly still, while Instructor Vorthak questioned whether humans possessed any useful military capabilities whatsoever. He wondered if they might be better suited for support roles like food preparation or equipment maintenance, rather than actual combat training. The verbal assault continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Instructor Vorthak seemed to be enjoying himself as he found new ways to highlight human inadequacy compared to the superior alien species surrounding them in the training hall. Other cadet groups began making sounds that their translator devices identified as laughter. The Vaxons were clicking their claws together in amusement, while some of the smaller species seemed relieved that they were not the ones being humiliated. So publicly, Park Dae-ho felt something cold growing in his stomach as the instructor continued his systematic destruction of human dignity. This went beyond simple military hazing or testing cadet resolve. This was public humiliation designed to break their spirits and convince them to quit it. As Instructor Vorthak prepared to deliver what was clearly intended to be his final crushing blow about human weakness, Park Dae-ho felt his grandmother's voice in his memory reminding him that true strength was not about size or natural weapons, but about refusing to surrender when everything seemed hopeless. The instructor's next words would change everything. Instructor Vorthak was clearly enjoying the fear and humiliation he saw in the human faces around him. The massive Craxian had broken thousands of cadets over the years, and he knew exactly how to find the pressure points that would make even the strongest warriors crumble under psychological assault. The training hall had become completely silent, except for his booming voice as he prepared to deliver what he considered the final blow that would send these pathetic humans running back to their insignificant little planet. Every alien eye was focused on the spectacle unfolding before them. Park Dae-ho could feel his heart beating faster, but his breathing remained controlled and steady. Years of martial arts training had taught him how to manage stress and fear, even when facing overwhelming opposition. His grandmother had survived the Korean War, and his father had worked multiple jobs to support their family through devastating poverty. Kim Tai-min was struggling to maintain his composure as sweat began forming on his forehead. The young man from Busan had grown up in a tough neighborhood, but nothing had prepared him for this level of systematic humiliation in front of hundreds of alien witnesses. Lee So-young kept her chin raised and her shoulders back, even though her hands were trembling slightly. She had faced discrimination and harassment during her military training on Earth, but this was different because there was nowhere to escape and no higher authority to appeal to for justice. Cho Min-ho and Yoon Jae-sung stood like statues trying to disconnect their minds from what was happening to their bodies. Both engineering students had learned to solve problems through logical analysis, but there was no rational solution to the emotional torture they were experiencing. Instructor Vorthak began talking about human families and how their weakness was probably genetic and passed down through generations of cowardice and inadequate warrior traditions. He suggested that human children were likely born already defeated by parents who were too weak to teach them proper military values. Something shifted behind Park Dae-ho's eyes as the instructor continued his attack on human heritage and family. Honor. The young cadet thought about his grandmother who had hidden in caves during bombing raids while caring for 3 small children. His father who had worked 18-hour days in dangerous factories to pay for his education. The Craxian instructor seemed energized by the distress he was causing and began pacing back and forth in front of the human cadets like a predator playing with wounded prey. His forearms gestured wildly as he painted an increasingly elaborate picture of human genetic weakness and evolutionary failure. He talked about human mothers being too frail and cowardly to produce children worthy of military service. He described human fathers as creatures who would abandon their families at the first sign of real danger. He painted a picture of an entire species built on cowardice and inadequacy. Park Dae-ho felt something fundamental beginning to crack inside his chest as Instructor Vorthak continued his systematic destruction of everything the young cadet held sacred. The alien was not just attacking humans as a species, he was attacking the memory of every human who had ever shown courage or made sacrifices for others. The breaking point came when Vorthak began describing human families as genetic failures, who produced weak offspring destined to contaminate the galaxy with their cowardice. He suggested that allowing humans into the Academy would weaken the entire galactic military structure by association with such pathetic creatures. Park Dae-ho remembered his mother fighting cancer for 3 years while maintaining a smile and positive attitude to protect her family from despair. He thought about his grandmother walking 20 miles through snow to find food for her children during the war, his father working with broken ribs because taking time off would mean his family would not eat. The words coming from Instructor Vorthak's mouth became a blur of sound as Park Dae-ho's vision began to narrow and focus with laser precision on the alien face in front of him. Everything else in the training hall seemed to fade away, leaving only him and the creature who had just insulted every human who had ever lived or died with dignity. Time seemed to slow down as Park Dae-ho took a single step forward, his movement so smooth and controlled that it seemed almost casual. Most of the alien observers did not even notice that he had moved because humans were supposed to be slow and clumsy compared to superior alien reflexes. Instructor Vorthak was still talking about human genetic weakness when he noticed that something had changed in Park Dae-ho's posture and expression. The Craxian had survived dozens of battles and had instincts that warned him when a situation was becoming dangerous. But these warning signals seemed impossible when facing such a small, weak creature. The young human cadet looked completely calm and relaxed as he took another step closer to the massive alien instructor. His breathing was steady and his hands hung loosely at his sides. He looked like someone who had just made a simple decision about something completely ordinary. But there was something in Park Dae-ho's eyes that made Instructor Vorthak's mandibles stop clicking and his forearms pause. In their wild gesturing, it was not anger or rage or fear. It was the cold, focused attention of someone who had identified a problem and was preparing to solve it with absolute precision. Kim Tae-min noticed the change first and tried to reach out, to grab his friend's arm, but Park Dae-ho was already moving with a speed and fluidity that seemed to violate the laws of physics. The movement was so economical and perfect that it looked more like a dance step than an attack lead. So Young saw what was happening and opened her mouth to shout a warning, but no sound came out because she realized that Park Dae-ho was moving faster than her voice could travel. The young woman had seen him practice martial arts, but this was something completely different. Cho Min-ho and Yoon Jae-sung watched in frozen shock as their quiet friend transformed into something that their engineering minds could not calculate or predict. The precision and speed of his movement suggested forces and accelerations. That should not be possible for unmodified human anatomy. Instructor Vorthak enhanced Craxian reflexes, finally recognized the danger, but it was already too late to react. The massive alien tried to bring his forearms up in a defensive position, but Park Dae-ho's fist was already traveling toward its target with unstoppable momentum. The sound that followed would echo through the Academy for years to come and would force every species in the galaxy to reconsider everything they thought they knew about human capabilities and the true nature of strength versus raw physical power. Every alien eye in the training hall was about to witness something that would change galactic military doctrine forever. The sound was not the clean snap that anyone expected from movies or training simulations. It was something wet and grinding and horrible that made every creature in the training hall take an involuntary step backward. Park Dae-ho's fist had connected with Instructor Vorthak's jaw with such perfect precision that the massive alien head snapped back like it had been hit by an artillery shell instructor. Vorthak stumbled backward, his forearms windmilling frantically as green blood streamed from his mouth where his lower mandible now hung at an impossible angle. The Craxian warrior who had terrorized thousands of cadets over the decades was making choking sounds as he tried to understand what had just happened to him, Park. Dae-ho stood, perfectly motionless, in the exact spot where he had thrown the punch. His fist was still extended, and his breathing remained calm and controlled. There was no satisfaction in his expression, no anger, no regret, just the focused stillness of someone who had done exactly what needed to be done. The entire training hall erupted into chaos as alien cadets began making sounds of shock and fear in dozens of different languages. The translator devices were overwhelmed by the sudden cacophony and began producing garbled mixed translations that only added to the confusion. Kim Taemin was the first human to react, moving to stand beside his friend as emergency alarms began wailing throughout the academy structure. The young man from Busan had never seen anything like what just happened, but he knew that Park Dae-ho would need support in whatever came next. Lee, So Young, followed immediately, taking position on Park Dae-ho's other side, her military training overriding her shock and disbelief. She had watched alien species demonstrate incredible combat abilities, but nothing had prepared her for seeing a human move with that kind of speed and precision. Cho Min-ho and Yoon Jae-sung joined the protective formation around their friend, their engineering minds struggling to process the physics of what they had witnessed. The force required to break Craxian bone structure should have shattered human knuckles, but Park Dae-ho's hand appeared completely undamaged. The Vaxxon cadets, who had been laughing at human weakness moments before, were now backing away from the small group of humans with expressions of genuine fear. These massive armored creatures who could tear through starship hulls with their bare claws suddenly looked uncertain and nervous. The Zephyrite crystal beings had stopped their musical ringing sounds and were glowing with different colors as their light-based communication systems tried to process what they had observed. The Quillen, who were famous for their incredible speed, had gone completely still as they realized they had not even seen the punch coming. Instructor Vorthak finally managed to steady himself against a weapons rack, his 3 remaining functional arms trying to hold his broken jaw in place while green blood continued dripping onto the training hall floor. His 4 eyes all focused on Park Dae-ho with a mixture of pain shock and something that might have been newfound. Respect Academy security forces arrived within minutes, their weapons drawn and energy shields activated, but they stopped short when they saw the scene before them. One of the most feared instructors in Craxian military history was sitting on the floor holding his face, while a human cadet half his size stood calmly, waiting for whatever came next. The security team leader, a tall insectoid creature with compound eyes, scanned the training hall trying to understand the situation. His tactical computer was showing that Instructor Vorthak had been injured, but the only potential threat in the area was a small group of humans who should not have been capable of harming anyone. Medical teams rushed into the hall with emergency equipment designed for dozens of different alien physiologies. The Craxian medical specialists immediately began working on Instructor Vorthak's jaw, while other medics scanned the area for additional casualties or ongoing threats. Park Dae-ho raised his hands slowly in the universal gesture of surrender, his voice carrying clearly. Across the suddenly quiet training hall as he spoke his first words since entering the academy that morning, the young cadet apologized for disrupting the training schedule and requested that his fellow humans not be punished for his actions. His tone was respectful but firm, showing no remorse for what he had done to the instructor, but genuine concern for his friends' futures at the academy. The other human cadets remained in formation around him, ready to face whatever consequences would follow. The alien students continued backing away from the humans as the full implications of what they had witnessed began to sink in. Every species in the galaxy had dismissed humans as weak creatures seeking protection among stronger beings. But one of these supposedly pathetic beings had just accomplished something that should have been physically impossible. Security officers approached cautiously with restraint devices designed for dangerous criminals, but they seemed uncertain about how to proceed. The human who had assaulted an instructor was cooperating completely and showed no signs of continued aggression, but the evidence of his capabilities was undeniable. Instructor Vorthak managed to raise one of his functional arms and made a gesture that caused the security team to step back. The injured Craxian was trying to speak, but his broken jaw made communication impossible. His 4 eyes remained fixed on Park Dae-ho with an expression that no one in the hall could interpret. The medical team finished their initial treatment and began preparing to transport Instructor Vorthak to the Academy medical facility. Advanced alien healing technology would be able to repair the damage, but the psychological impact of what had happened would take much longer to process, as the injured instructor was carried away on an anti-gravity stretcher. He managed to turn his head for one final look at the human cadet, who had changed everything. Park Dae-ho met his gaze steadily, showing neither triumph nor apology, just the same calm focus he had displayed throughout the entire incident. The training hall slowly began to empty as alien cadets were dismissed by nervous academy officials. Everyone knew that what they had witnessed would be talked about for years to come. The small, weak humans who everyone had dismissed as a mistake were clearly something much more dangerous than anyone had realized. Park Dae-ho and his fellow humans were escorted away by security forces while alien students watched in silence. The Academy would never be the same, and neither would galactic understanding of what humanity truly represented among the stars. The Academy medical facility had never treated a Craxian with a broken jaw before because such injuries were considered impossible given their species' natural armor and bone density. The medical staff worked frantically with equipment designed to handle the most severe combat injuries, but even their advanced healing technology struggled with the precise damage that Park Dae-ho had inflicted. Instructor Vorthak lay on the medical table while alien doctors used molecular reconstruction, tools to rebuild his shattered mandible. The Craxian healing factor that made his species nearly invulnerable to most weapons seemed confused by the specific type of trauma it was trying to repair. In the Security Analysis Center, Academy officials reviewed the training hall footage frame by frame, trying to understand what had actually occurred. Even when slowed down to 1,000th normal speed, Park Dae-ho movement appeared as little more than a blur that seemed to violate basic laws of physics. Commandant Zorvak had commanded the Academy for over 20 years and had seen cadets from every known warrior species demonstrate their abilities, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for what the security recordings showed. A human cadet had moved faster than Craxian reflexes could track and delivered a blow with surgical precision. The Commandant was a distinguished Altarian whose species was known for their analytical minds and strategic thinking. But the footage he was watching challenged everything the galactic community believed about human physical capabilities. The punch had targeted the exact structural weakness in Craxian jaw anatomy that most species were not even aware existed. Park Dae-ho sat quietly in the interrogation room with his hands folded politely in his lap while alien officials debated his fate in languages he could not understand. When Commandant Zorvac finally entered the room, the human cadet stood respectfully and waited for permission to sit back down. The questions came in rapid succession, delivered through universal translators that converted Alterian speech into Korean. Had Park Dae-ho received combat enhancement drugs? Was he genetically modified? Did he possess cybernetic implants? Each inquiry was met with simple, honest answers that only deepened the mystery. Medical scans confirmed that Park Dae-ho was exactly what he appeared to be, an unmodified human with no artificial enhancements or alien technology integrated into his body. The scanners detected nothing unusual about his bone density, muscle composition, or nervous system. Yet he had accomplished something that should have been impossible. Hours of questioning revealed a picture that shook the Academy understanding of human nature. Park Dae-ho had grown up in poverty in Seoul, working multiple jobs while attending school. He had learned martial arts in whatever space he could find, practicing forms in alleyways and empty parking lots when he could not afford proper training facilities. His physical conditioning came from years of necessity, not from advanced training programs. He had carried heavy construction materials as a teenager, loaded trucks at shipping warehouses, and walked long distances because his family could not afford transportation. Every day of his life had been physical training without him realizing it. The revelation that changed everything came when medical specialists began analyzing human muscle fiber, density, and reaction speed under stress conditions. What the galaxy had interpreted as weakness was actually efficiency. Human bodies were not built for raw power like Craxian warriors, but for endurance, adaptability, and explosive action when pushed beyond normal limits. Dr. Nexalia, the Academy Chief Medical Officer, was a Zephyrite whose species had studied biological warfare for thousands of years. Her analysis of human physiology revealed that their muscle fibers could contract with incredible speed when flooded with adrenaline, and their nervous systems could process combat information faster than most military computers. The data suggested that humans had evolved on a planet where survival required constant adaptation to changing threats. Their bodies were designed not for specialized combat like most warrior species, but for surviving anything the universe could throw at them through sheer versatility and determination. Commandant Zorvac found himself reviewing every assumption the galactic community had made about humanity. These were not weak creatures seeking protection among stronger species. They were apex predators from a death world who had learned to hide their capabilities behind unassuming appearances. As news of the incident spread through the Academy, something fundamental shifted in how other species viewed the human cadets. Vaxon warriors who had dismissed them as pathetic began watching their movement patterns with wary respect. Zephyrites started analyzing their reaction times during routine activities. Even the proud Quillen, who considered speed to be the ultimate combat advantage, began to acknowledge that velocity meant nothing if you could not see the attack coming. Park Dae-ho had moved so fast that creatures evolved for speed had been unable to track his motion. The other human cadets found themselves suddenly popular, but not in the way they had hoped for inclusion. Species that had ignored them completely now studied their every action with scientific curiosity mixed with barely concealed nervousness. Kim Tae-min discovered Vaxon cadets taking notes on his exercise routines. Lee So-young became the subject of intensive observation by multiple alien species who wanted to understand how human females might differ from males in combat capability. The revelation that humans showed little physical difference between genders in terms of potential violence made many species reconsider their own assumptions about warfare. Min-ho and Yoon Jae-sung found themselves surrounded by alien engineering students who wanted to understand how human problem-solving abilities might translate into weapons design and tactical planning. Their quiet, analytical approach to challenges was suddenly seen as potentially dangerous rather than merely academic. The decision about Park Dae-ho's fate would set precedent for all future human involvement in galactic military affairs. If he was punished severely, it would send a message that human aggression would not be tolerated. But if he was treated leniently, it might suggest that the galaxy was afraid of what humans might be capable of. Commandant Zorvac spent 3 days consulting with military strategists from 12 different species, while Instructor Vorthak underwent reconstructive surgery. The injured Craxian had regained consciousness and was asking to speak with the human cadet who had broken his jaw. The Academy was buzzing with rumors and speculation as alien. Cadets tried to process what they had witnessed. Some species were calling for all humans to be expelled as potentially dangerous. Others suggested that human combat potential needed to be studied and understood before any decisions were made in. His cell park Deho continued his daily exercise routine and meditation practice, seemingly unaffected by the chaos he had created. When guards brought him meals, he thanked them politely in whatever language his translator could manage. He showed no signs of regret or concern about his future. The galaxy was about to learn that underestimating humanity had been a critical error in judgment that would change military doctrine and interspecies relations forever. 3 days after the incident, Instructor Vorthak returned to duty with a perfectly reconstructed jaw and a completely transformed perspective on his human students. The medical reconstruction had worked flawlessly, using advanced molecular healing technology, but the memory of being dropped by a creature he had dismissed as pathetically weak would remain with him forever. The massive Craxian instructor walked differently now, moving with a subtle awareness that had not been present before. His 4 eyes constantly tracked the movements of every human cadet, not with contempt, but with the careful attention of a predator recognizing another apex species. Commandant Zorvac had made his unprecedented decision after consulting with military experts from across the galaxy park. Deho would not be expelled or imprisoned. Instead, he would become the subject of an intensive study into human combat potential under controlled laboratory conditions. The announcement sent shockwaves through the Academy as alien species struggled to understand the implications. If humans were not being punished for violence against instructors, then everything about Academy discipline and hierarchy needed to be reconsidered. Park Deho accepted his new status with the same quiet dignity he had shown throughout the crisis. He submitted to medical testing, psychological evaluation, and combat analysis while maintaining his respectful demeanor and cooperative attitude. The scientists studying him found his calm acceptance of scrutiny more unsettling than any display of aggression would have been. The other human cadets suddenly found themselves the center of unprecedented attention from their alien classmates, but not the friendly inclusion. They had hoped for species that had previously ignored them, now watched their every movement with scientific curiosity mixed with nervous energy. Kim Taemin discovered that Vaxxan warriors were secretly recording his exercise routines and analyzing his movement patterns. The massive armored creatures who had laughed at human weakness were now trying to understand how such small beings could generate explosive power when necessary. Lee So-young became the subject of intensive study by female aliens from species where gender determined combat roles. Her ability to match male performance in physical activities challenged fundamental assumptions about biological limitations that had shaped galactic military doctrine. Cho Min-ho and Yoon Jae-sung found themselves surrounded by alien engineering students who wanted to understand how human analytical thinking might be applied to weapons design and battlefield tactics. Their quiet problem-solving approach was suddenly seen as potentially revolutionary rather than merely academic. The real change came when Instructor Vorthak personally requested to continue training the human cadets. His approach had shifted dramatically from condescension to genuine scientific curiosity about their hidden capabilities. The Craxian began designing exercises specifically tailored to human physiology rather than forcing them to adapt to alien training methods. During one memorable training session, Lee So-young demonstrated the human ability to maintain precise coordination and tactical awareness even when pushed far beyond what should have been her physical breaking point. The young woman continued functioning effectively, while alien cadets with superior strength and endurance collapsed. From exhaustion, Cho Min-ho and Yoon Jae-sung, working together as a team, accomplished complex engineering challenges that had stumped groups of supposedly more intelligent species. Their human ability to think creatively under pressure and adapt. Solutions in real time proved more valuable than raw computational power. Kim Tae-min surprised everyone by demonstrating that human endurance was not just about physical stamina, but also mental resilience. The young man maintained focus and accuracy. During extended training exercises, while aliens with enhanced nervous systems began making errors from stress and fatigue, most shocking of all was Park Dae-ho's continued performance during advanced combat simulations. His ability to analyze opponent weaknesses and deliver precisely targeted attacks made him nearly unbeatable against species that possessed overwhelming physical advantages. The Academy's entire training curriculum began shifting as instructors realized they had been trying to train humans using methods designed for completely different types of biology. Human capabilities required different approaches that emphasized adaptability, endurance, and precision over raw strength. Medical studies revealed that human stress response systems could push their bodies to performance levels that exceeded their normal limitations by enormous margins. What had appeared to be weakness was actually a sophisticated biological system designed for surviving impossible situations. Dr. Nexalia published research papers that revolutionized galactic understanding of combat biology. Her analysis showed that humans had evolved in an environment so hostile that their bodies treated normal academy training as rest periods rather than challenges. 6 months later, when the first class of human cadets prepared for graduation, they did so with honors and genuine respect from species across the galaxy. The transformation in alien attitudes had been complete and irreversible. Park Dae-ho was selected to give the graduation speech, representing not just human cadets, but a new understanding of what strength truly meant in military service. He spoke quietly about the importance of not judging others by appearance or making assumptions about capabilities. Based on prejudice, he never mentioned the incident that had changed everything. But everyone in the audience remembered the moment when a human cadet had proven that the deadliest weapons often came in the most unexpected packages. His words about hidden strength and the danger of underestimation resonated through the academy halls. Instructor Vorthak attended the ceremony with pride, watching his former students receive their commissions as officers in the galactic military. The Craxian had learned more about warfare and combat effectiveness from training humans than from 30 years of traditional military doctrine. As he watched Park Dae-ho accept his commission as a tactical analysis officer, Vorthak unconsciously rubbed his reconstructed jaw. The slight ache that remained served as a permanent reminder that strength could not be measured by size or natural weapons alone. The Academy had been forever changed by 5 small humans from an insignificant planet. The galaxy had learned that humanity's arrival among the stars was not a request for protection, but an announcement that new apex predators had joined the cosmic community. Other species would never again make the mistake of assuming that gentle appearances indicated weakness, or that diplomatic courtesy meant inability to defend oneself when pushed too far. The humans had proven that sometimes the most dangerous enemies were the ones who looked like they could not hurt anyone. Years later, military academies throughout the galaxy would teach courses about the human incident and the importance of accurate threat assessment. Park Dae-ho had become a legend, not for his violence, but for his demonstration that true strength often came disguised as apparent vulnerability. The 5 Korean cadets had arrived at the academy as representatives of a species seeking acceptance among stronger beings. They graduated as officers in a galactic military that had fundamentally changed its understanding of what it meant to be a warrior.